Hey there, lady. My name is Molly Conley, and I'm devoted to helping women reinvent their love lives, whether that's after divorce, dating on and off the apps, or in their committed relationship. Why? Because I've been there. I'm a former college athlete who filed for divorce 3 years into marriage, swam in the online dating pool into my late 30s, and now I am married to the man of my spreadsheet dreams who I met 4 months before the world shut down. As a dating and relationship coach, I help my clients shift the focus from being obsessed with finding Mr. Right to shifting to herself as Miss Right Now. We build a foundation filled with clarity, connection, and confidence, knowing she is worth waiting for. Each week on the podcast, I'll bring you love life insights and savvy guests, where you will receive the courage to release programmed limiting beliefs. Discover patterns and behaviors restricting you from finding and attracting quality men, and ways to choose yourself first so you can build a foundation for a healthy relationship with yourself and a partner. Hey there, lady. Welcome back to the podcast, Reinventing the Arena. I'm your host, Molly. Can you believe it's already the end of January? I swear it was just the holidays. Before you know it, spring is going to be here with lovely tulips. They're my favorite flowers, so I looked forward to them popping up every single year. Time flies when you're having fun, so maybe that's also kind of like, when you're focused on your goals and sometimes when you're in a relationship, especially if you're overlooking some red flags, bad habits, or maybe some inconsistencies with your significant other. But there's one thing I think most women have fallen victim to, and that's dating potential. Hell, I know I have. In today's episode, I'm going to share 3 things I didn't know then, but I'm glad I know now. 8 red flags that say that you are dating potential, your relationship expectations and your actions, seeing how those line up. And then how to use patience in your relationship in case some of these red flags are making you think you are dating potential. So before we get into that, of course, I'm going to share a story. Long ago in 2007, in a far-off land called Omaha, Nebraska, I was hanging out with my guy friends at a local bar. Some of them were in relationships, and they helped me cope with being single through inside jokes, 80s and 90s dance music, and some really good old arcade games. One Friday night, a friend of theirs I had never met before walked in. And to be honest, we hit it off, and we talked until the bar closed. That person was my future husband. A few months after our first date, I was talking to my girlfriends about him, and what I didn't realize was that I kept saying that he had a lot of potential. I just never used the word potential. But back then in my 20s, I thought potential was a good thing. That meant growth, that meant opportunities. We could grow together and experience life in new ways. But what I wanted in my life was way different than what he wanted. Yet we still got married thinking we would just, figure it out as time went on. I was wrong. The potentials turned into problems, and things I used to think would become, opportunities in our relationship became areas that was going to push us away from each other, let's say. Honestly, I was at my wit's end, and I took a big risk and got divorced 3 years later. Honestly, I didn't realize my mistake back then of how I dated potential because I kept falling for it again and again. And it wasn't until I really started to do the inner work almost a decade later in 2016. My hope with this episode and podcast in general is that these personal stories will help you in some way to know that it's not just you, that it's not that you were wrong, it's not that men are shit, and it's not that love sucks. Hell, it's that I didn't know better and you didn't know better, or maybe you don't know yet, but now I do. And now I want you to know better before it happens to you. So here's the 3 things that I didn't know then, but I know now. First and foremost, I didn't know myself enough to tell anyone what my 3-year plan was or what my dreams were for 10 years down the road. That one fun question that they used to say, or maybe they still do in interviews, like, what's your 3 or 5 year plan? Where do you see yourself at? I used to just think that was for your career, for your interviews, but that isn't what it's for anymore. There's numerous reasons that factor into it, such as the people you're around, like family, coworkers, friends. And just real quick, if you haven't listened to episode 7 called Resign and Design Your Relationship Board, go back to this episode and give it a listen to learn more about how people affect that in your life. A few more factors include that I didn't know what I wanted in my career, family life, and what did I wanted to do for fun. So once I was able to figure those things out, I was able to decide how I wanted to move forward in my relationships. Second, I had yet to spend time alone to fully date myself and enjoy the solitude of being single. And yes, this does exist. I'm going to tell you right now, if you haven't experienced it, it is actually really, really nice. It is so peaceful. And this includes learning how to stay in on the weekends to just hang out by yourself. I didn't know how to do that. If you want to learn more about dating yourself and haven't listened to it already, jump back to episode number 5, Why It's Important to Date Yourself, the 10 Reasons I Wish Someone Told Me. And third, I had no idea what the red flags were for dating potential. And honestly, unless you had parents who told you these things in a very loving way, you probably didn't catch them either. Or maybe you had a savvy aunt. That's what I'm planning to be for my nieces and nephews. So before we get into these red flags, I want to give you a true or false quiz. So if you can, grab pen and paper or even just jot these down in your notes app. Now, if you're in a relationship, use your experiences to answer these questions. If not, use a recent one, or if you're dating someone but yet not in a committed relationship, go with that. And here we go. True or false? He has goals and takes steps to achieve them, such as he wants to be healthy, so he eats a certain way, or he wants a promotion, so he's learning a new skill at work. True or false? You're teaching him with some serious conversations about behavior and habits on a consistent basis. True or false? He tells you about his boss asking him about a recent issue at work. He took the feedback and is planning to make a few adjustments to get the project back on track. Number 4, true or false? You're watching him play outside with the neighborhood kids in a game of basketball. You realize he might be a good father someday. Number 5, true or false? You get excited about fixing his mistakes so he can be a better person for your relationship, but he says he doesn't want your help or your advice. Number 6, true or false? When you meet up, he's constantly complaining about how it's someone else's fault, like his parents, coworker, boss, or friends. They either don't understand or they're jerks. And last but not least, number 7, true or false? You're texting him as you're leaving work, you're exhausted, and to your surprise, he said for you to not make dinner because he's on the way to pick up meals for both of you from your favorite restaurant. All right, look those over. And if you answered true to questions number 2, 5, and 6, you're dating potential. Yet, what are the red flags that you are dating potential? Some of those questions might have clearly pointed them out, but maybe not. What you might be surprised is that there's some that are more about what you're doing than what he is. But let's start with the guy red flags, okay? Red flag number 1, you find yourself teaching. You have conversation after conversation about his behavior and how to make the changes. Yes, in relationships, you have discussions that repeat themselves, but not lengthy conversations where you're expecting him to mature or grow up. If you ever find yourself thinking that, it's a red flag. Red flag number 2, you hear him say, when I have this, I'll do that. And it never amounts to anything. Statements like he's going to do something, yet hasn't made the steps toward his goal. So back to the health one. Let's say he says, I'm going to get ripped for swimsuit season, yet doesn't go to the gym and eats like shit. On a side note, this is like not a one-time thing. Like this is something where it's on repeat. If he skips the gym because he's sick or he has to travel for work, that's a no-brainer. But if he's literally all talk and no action, red flag. Red flag number 3. When you offer advice, he doesn't want to hear it. He says he already knows or doesn't take action towards it. Very plain and simple. He might even say that you're acting like his mom. And if he does say that, that's a double red flag. Gosh, I'm already getting exhausted reading these. Red flag number 4. All you hear is complaining. His job sucks, his boss is an asshole, his dad's a jerk, and his best friend is a complete sucker for his new girlfriend or wife, whatever. Basically, he loves putting other people down and pushing blame away from himself. He takes zero accountability for his behavior, his habits, and the words that come out of his mouth. Okay, so that's 4. Ironically, I have 4 more, but guess what? These are all about you. How are you contributing? And don't worry, I've literally done all of these in a few previous relationships before I was tired of my own bullshit and did the inner work. Okay, so red flag number 1 for us. You lower your standards or ignore red flags because you convince yourself it's eventually going to work out. Here, you might have fallen in love with a handsome face or a bad boy that has no business being in your world, but you're addicted to HGTV because, you love a fixer-upper. Red flag number 2. You're fantasizing what it would be like in the future, once he's better. When you have this perfect moment together, something that maybe is super romantic or a milestone in your relationship or even like a milestone in your career, education, whatever, and you start to fantasize what your future would be like, usually this is only from your perspective. Red flag number 3. You're waiting for him to catch up to your level. You have to help him catch up to where you are, whether that's pushing him to get a higher paying job, to move out of the apartment he shares with his best friend, or even hinting that you want a ring on your finger and he's just not there. All right, red flag number 4. You're actually scared to lose him because he's a good catch. Eventually. Don't forget about the time, money, and effort you've put into the relationship to make him a good catch. But majority of the time with this red flag, it's our own issue that we're running from. Deep inside, we're either afraid of being alone, that no one will ever love us like he did, or whatever other fear rises to the surface. If you're ever in this place where you are afraid he's going to break up with you, it's time for you to challenge your own insecurities. Go back to episode number 6, what the mirrors are hiding in your relationships, to get a deeper understanding. As I went over these 4 red flags, you might be contributing to your relationship. I had a question. Are your expectations in life lining up? Meaning, are your expectations of your significant other or your relationship the same expectations you have for yourself? Literally, think about this. If you're expecting a man to pay for everything you want, cash in hand, are you paying for everything you want? Or are you putting it on a credit card? Or are your family members or friends helping you in some way? Yes, this even includes being on your parents' cell phone plan. Seriously, that's still helping. If you're expecting a man to have certain status at work, what are you doing to better yourself in your career? Or on the flip side, are you expecting to be treated well? And yet this looks like to you that he went out of his way to say good morning to you via text. He went out of his way to ask you what you're doing tonight. He went out of the way to hold your hand in public. If so, here's a reminder of your first red flag. You're lowering your standards. Sometime in the near future, sit down and daydream. What do you want in an ideal household? What do you want in an ideal career? And whatever else you enjoy. Then, and only then, envision how a man would fit into your ideal life. What does that look like? Get really clear on this as it will help you serve as a guide in your current or future relationships. So now that we've gone through the three things that I wish I would have known then, the eight red flags, and exploring your expectations, I want to cover an area that's usually not discussed when women are dating potential. And that's knowing when to use patience in your relationship when a man is in transition. So, what do I mean by that? Well, maybe he's recently divorced or starting a new job, or maybe he's moving into a house from an apartment, or maybe he has new expectations at work. It could even be working on a large personal goal. Here's the green flag for when he's in a transition: he's doing the work, he's taking the actions, he's doing all that he can with what he has in the moment to move towards his goals and dreams. But here's the gut check on that green flag: are his goals and dreams in line with yours? Are they in line with your expectations? For example, let's say he's tired of living, let's say both of you are living in Minneapolis and he's tired of living in Minneapolis and he wants to move to Chicago for work at a new company. So he's improving his skills and working during the day, and now he started taking classes at night. He's putting everything else in his life on the back burner: working out, traveling, social life, you, until he meets his goal. So then there's you. You would love to move to Chicago, but further out of the city so you can buy a home and raise a family. You already have an established career and you are ready to get married in the near future. So, what do you do? Here, I would recommend a gut check conversation, first with yourself and then with him. How badly do you want to get married in the near future? How badly do you want to live in the suburbs of Chicago? How badly do you want to raise a family in the suburbs of Chicago? If you find yourself saying, I would really like to get married and start a family, but maybe closer to home, not moving to Chicago doesn't really light up to your future goals. Or maybe you realize that your parents or other people around you are pushing you to get married ASAP, so you're okay with holding off for a few more years. Regardless, having the gut conversation with yourself is essential, so that you can lean into his goals around this area. You can even start asking him questions like, what makes him interested in this specific company in Chicago? Where would he want to live in Chicago? What does he want to do in Chicago that he can't do in Minneapolis? What are his thoughts about other areas that make life enjoyable, like hobby, travel, friends, family, and, the romantic relationship he has with you? Would he like to be married in the next 3 years, even if he doesn't accomplish his goal? In a situation like this, it would be no surprise if he doesn't have the answers to some of these questions, but they are still worth asking because he's going to start thinking about them. If his answers don't line up with what you want, and that's okay. What's not okay is still dreaming up what life would be like together from your goals and dreams only, hoping that he will come around. At least you know it might be difficult to move forward in the relationship now knowing your goals don't match, but it will eventually save you time, energy, and more heartbreaks in the future. Because now you will have the experience from this lesson to ask some difficult questions ahead of time. Okay, let's wrap this up. Here's the 8 relationship red flags, starting with your partner. Number 1, you find yourself teaching. Number 2, you hear him say, when I have this, I'll do that, and it never amounts to anything. Number 3, when you offer advice, he doesn't want to hear it. Number 4, all you hear is complaining. Number 5, you lower your standards or ignore red flags because you convince yourself it will eventually work out. Number 6, you're fantasizing what it would be like in the future once he's better. 7, you're waiting for him to catch up to your level. And number 8, you're actually scared to lose him because he's a good catch, eventually. This episode had quite a bit to think about, so for your reflection question, I want to go return to your ideal life. Schedule some time alone to sit down and daydream your life without a partner. Where do you live? What are you doing in your career? What are your hobbies? Where have you or will you travel? Anything like that. Lay it all out. And then think of the type of partner do you want that you would want standing by your side. If you're in a relationship right now, remember to take an account of his own goals and dreams so that you're still being authentic to yourself and respectful to him. Really get clear on this as will help serve as that guide, as I mentioned, for your current or future relationships. All right, lady, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, would you take a moment to leave me a review? They don't show up on the podcast immediately, but when they do, I would love to read what you have to say. If you ever want me to discuss a certain topic or go more in depth, send me a DM on Instagram at Reinventing the Arena. Have a wonderful week, and I will chat with you soon. Okay, so it's no surprise, but I love sharing personal stories with you ladies, and this one includes a product. In 2021, I tried dry January for the first time, and it was tough. Fast forward to 2022, and I thought it was going to be easier, but it wasn't. I couldn't find anything, literally anything that tasted good to replace my favorite cocktail or glass of wine. So for months, I was still looking because I wanted something to replace the beverage whenever I wanted. Then Moment appeared, and I fell in love. It's a botanical water, either still or sparkling, with no artificial flavors, no caffeine, and no added sugar. Instead, they have refreshing fruit flavors, healthy botanicals, and adaptogens. Some of my favorite flavors are blueberry ginger, spiced mango, and blood orange. I always keep them on hand for those nights when I like to sip a cocktail or have a glass of wine, but rather not deal with any of those side effects of alcohol. You know what I'm talking about: the headache, the dehydration, the horrible night's sleep, the hangover, and whatever else may come your way. If you're looking for an alcoholic replacement for a dry January or just because, check out Moment. Here's some fun facts: 1% of all their sales goes to mental health nonprofits, and they were on Shark Tank. If you want to give them a try, use my promo code Reinventing the Arena at checkout for 15% off. The link is in the show notes.